Hey everyone, welcome to my new video. I wanted to make a really quick video on how I create the trees and how I approach creating trees and the grass for my scenes, because a lot of you were asking for that, and there are multiple ways how to do this. And apart from just putting some low poly blob somewhere and calling it a tree, you can go about it in a semi-realistic way, like you can see on the scene here. So that's something I want to show you today. And if you're new to the channel and you want to see more tutorials like this in the future, hit that subscribe button and the bell button to get notified when I release something new. And generally, if you like to see more short content like this in the future, hit that like button. That'll help me to see that you really like this. So let's get to it and let's create some garden scene. So within the empty Blender file, let's just start by defining our scene. So create a plane, Shift A, plane, and now I'll scale it 4 times. So tab in, press S and 4 to scale it 4 times. Now I will extrude this a little bit. And now I will extrude this a little bit to define our diorama scope, something like this. And we can subdivide this, so right click, subdivide, and we can do this a few times. You could also modify it here, but I find it quicker like that. So I think this should be enough for a start. And now I want to modify the height of this, but I don't want to affect any other vertices. So go to the face select by pressing 3, click this one here. Let's switch back to the vertex select and press H to hide it. And now we can just select some of these vertices, enable proportional editing by pressing O, press G, Z and grab them out, and with mouse wheel we can affect the fall of scale like this. So just slight bumps here so we can see it's not a straight terrain. And now we can switch this to the random and mess it up a little bit here and there, so it looks like a ground a little bit, something like this. Not everywhere, there will be grass covering the ground anyway, so I think something like this should work. And now we can select all and press Ctrl T to triangulate, and that'll be our terrain. And now we'll prepare some particle objects for the grass and the tree. So let's press Shift A, add a plane, and let's move it aside. So press G and Y and move it here. And now I want to go into the edit mode, so press tab, let's press S, X, and scale it like this, so it's rectangular. Now switch off the proportional editing by pressing O, and I want to make 2 loop cuts, so Ctrl R and make 2 loop cuts here. Right click to release, and now select these 2 vertices and scale them on the X axis, something like this, and here a little bit more. And maybe we can select this one and move it here. So this will be our very low poly leaf. And if you want, you can merge these vertices. I like to keep it like this, so it looks a little bit rounded from afar, maybe even more. And now select this face in the middle, so press 3, select it, press G and Z and drag it up a little bit, so there's slight curvature. And now if you look from the side, you can see origin point is here in the middle, so press A, G, Y and move it here so the leaf starts at the origin point. Tab out and let's call this leaf so we can reference it later. And yeah, just move this aside a little bit. Now create a new plane. Let's move it here. Press tab and scale it on the X. So this will be our grass blade. Now this will be very simple. So Ctrl R for 1 loop cut here, 1 for vertex select. Select these 2 vertices and press M. That's a new command in Blender 2.83. It switched from Alt M to M, and it's a command for merging, and we can switch this at center. Now we can modify this as well. Look from the side, select all, move this to origin point. I will enable X-ray by holding Z. And if you can't find the X-ray option, you can find it right here. Okay, so this will be our grass blade, and I want to move it a little bit more here. So it's more like this, something like that, and let's call this grass blade and move it somewhere here. And we can select both of these, press M, new collection, and call these particles. We don't need to see them, and we can disable them here so they are not in the way. Now select the terrain, press period on the numpad to focus here, and now we'll create some trees. So shift right click right here, and let's create a single word. If you don't see that option here, you need to enable extra objects add-on. And now let's look from the front by pressing 1 on the numpad, and be sure you have the vertex select active, and then start extruding some tree like this. And this should be fairly simple. Don't make too much complicated shape of the tree. I think something like this should work just fine. And now we'll need to move it in some other directions as well. So just play with it a little bit in the 3D and move those branches. Okay, something like this should work. Maybe we need some more vertices here, so Ctrl R, create a cut there, and move it here a little bit like this. Okay, tab out, and now I will go to the modifiers tab and add a skin modifier. So here it is. And this will look depending on your scale of the scene. So tab into the edit mode, select all vertices, and with Ctrl A you can reduce the size here to something like this. And now select the bottom one, enable proportional editing, but don't forget to switch back to smooth, and reduce the fall off. Okay, and now press Ctrl A, and by adjusting the fall off you can make the tree thicker like this. Okay, I think this should work. So tab out now, I will toggle off the X-ray. Now let's press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision modifier, and you can see it rounded our tree down here. So look from the front, go into the edit mode, select the bottom vertex, and just press E and extrude this down a little bit. And you can additionally press Ctrl A to make it wider down there, like this. And I don't like the shape of this here, so I will add a loop cut there. Okay, so let's say this is our tree now with the subdivision modifier, and the last thing I want to do is to add a decimate modifier. So we'll simplify the geometry a little bit so it's not that uniform. And now drag and hold the ratio and push it down a little bit to something you like, maybe something like this. 0.4 looks fine to me. Okay, I don't want to create a lot of these long triangles, so go easy on the decimate modifier. And this is basically a base for our low poly tree. We can now scale it up a little bit. And now it's time to create a crown, and that's like the easiest thing to do. It will be made out of just a few icospheres with particle system there. So shift right click somewhere here, press shift A. Let's add the icosphere. And now we don't need to modify anything. Just go here to the object properties, and let's switch the viewport display to wire or bounce, whatever works for you. So I will switch this to wire maybe. And now go to the particle system, create a new one, and right here I want to modify the frame start to 0 and the end to 0, so we have all the particles at once here. And now go to the physics tab and disable the physics, so select none, so they don't fall off if you accidentally play the animation or something. And now if we go to the render section, you can switch the halo to object and select our particle object. And in this case, it'll be leaf, so click the leaf. You can see we have our leaf objects there. And now let's uncheck the show emitter. This will ensure that while rendering the emitter, so the icosphere itself won't be visible at all and only leaves will be visible. And if we go back to the source of the emission, we can switch from faces to volume, and that's something I really want to do. And you can see there are leaves inside the sphere. And now let's just reduce the number to something more reasonable. Let's say 500, and we'll see how it looks. Okay, and now if we go to the render section again, you can adjust the scale of these leaves. So maybe we can go even lower than 500, something like this, like 400. And now let's add some scale randomness there and check the rotation. And I forgot to mention, you could see that when I made these particles, I made them pointing in the y direction in the edit mode. So this is their z axis, and that's the best way to approach creating a particle, because if you check the rotation, they'll get aligned based on their y direction. So let's now randomize the rotation a little bit, and you can go full random and full randomize face. So it's really messed up here. And now I can just switch back to the textured mode, and we'll switch to the material preview, and let's add the material to that icosphere, and let's call that transparent. So we got a little nicer EV preview, and down here we can check alpha clip, and we can bring down the alpha. Okay, and now if you select the leaf and create a new material for that, you can see only leaves in the EV. And right now it's just about Alt D to duplicate this icosphere and create some additional leaves here, like this. Okay, and if you go back to the particle settings and play with the number of particles, you can easily adjust the number for all of those. So depending on the scale of your illustration, you might want to modify this some more. So let's leave it to something like 300. And now it looks a little bit uniform, so we can press R twice and just rotate this a little bit here and there, so we get different rotation for different parts of the tree. And now select all of this, shift click the tree, press Ctrl P and parent, keep transformation, and now we have tree that we can duplicate and move around the scene as much as we want. So go back to the solid. So now let's just create a quick rock. I will add a cube. Let's move it here. Let's disable the particles. And now I will subdivide this with Ctrl 1 and apply the modifier. Go into edit mode, scale it down, and choose a bisect tool to carve out a nicer rock. So something like this. Okay, this will do for now. So we can now move the rock and hold Ctrl to snap it. But I want to switch this to face. So when we are holding Ctrl, we are snapping like this. And now I'll create just a little pathway from these rocks. So let me press R twice. So we have this flat face pointing upside, and move it down like this a little bit, and then press G and Shift Z to move it about. And now I will just press Alt D to duplicate this several times to create some kind of pathway. This should work nicely, and now I can just press Shift bracket with selected the tree, press Alt D, Shift Z, and duplicate one more tree. Now select the parent object and let's modify it and move it about. Okay, and now we'll add some grass. So select the terrain object, go into the edit mode, pick up the select tool, and now select only few vertices like this, and we'll create a vertex group for them. So in the object data tab, let's create a new group and let's call this grass, and let's click assign. Okay, that's it. And now go to the particle settings, create a new particle settings, and again you can choose from the emitter and hair, and I find the hair option better if you want to create more realistic grass. There are more options how to do like the clunking and the roughness of the hair and everything, but for a simple low poly grass like this where you need to just distribute it over some object, the emitter is very quick and easy to use. So let's modify the start and end of the frame, and let's disable those physics. Okay, like this. And down here we want to go to the vertex groups and assign grass vertex groups to density and length, so we have the objects only here. And now in the render tab we can switch to the object, select our grass blade here and adjust the scale like this, and some scale randomness so they are not the same size. And if you check the rotation, you can now randomize the rotation. Don't go too wild because it's too scruffy then, so something like this. And you can modify and randomize the face so they are not pointing to every direction. And now we can switch to the weight painting mode, so go here and switch to weight paint. And now you can see how you can reduce the weight. Use F to change the radius and just unpaint some of these leaves if you want, and vice versa. If you add some weight, you can add some new here and there. So that's something I really want to do here. But first let me go to the edit mode and select just these vertices, tab out, and now enable the paint mask. So we are now painting only here. So they'll be very useful, and we can add some weight here to create some more blades there. But I don't want to go much to the edge because it could create these grass leaves on the side there, which we don't want. Okay, I'm quite satisfied with this so far, so let's go back to the object mode and we can go up and increase the number and maybe play with the scale a little bit more. Okay, and right now I want to create a little fence here, so shift right click, add a plane, and now tab in, press R, X, 90 degrees, move it up a little bit, scale it on the X axis like this. Okay, and let's select this one, this edge on the top, right click, subdivide, and drag this new vertex out, and let's extrude the whole thing. And now we can add an array modifier. Let's set 2 for an offset, and let's adjust the number like this. Maybe we need to make this a little bit smaller, so something like that. And now on the same place, just add another plane, tab in, rotate on the X axis, scale on the Z, and move it up Let's look from the front, and I will move it here. Select these two vertices, grab them and move them here. Okay, like that, and I will Shift D and duplicate this. Select all and extrude a little bit. Okay, and now I will just select all, go into the edit mode and press Shift N, so I have the normals correct. And we can now move on and add some lighting. First of all, let's create our camera, and I will use the Isocam add-on. You can find the link in the description. And now I will create the game Isocam here and switch the resolution to something more like 4:3 ratio. Let's press G, then Z, and move this up a little bit so it's centered a little bit better. Now reset the cursor, so Shift S, cursor to world origin, Shift A, add a plane. Now press S to scale it up so it fills the background. And now we can switch to the material preview, and with the background selected we can create a new material. Let's call that background, and yeah, let's set it to something blue for now. And for the ground we can create the ground material, and let's set this to green like this, maybe a little bit yellow in there. Let's select the rock, create the rock material. Let's darken this and maybe add some warm tones like that. Now for the tree, just some brownish darker color, and let's go up with the roughness. And we can have a white material for the fence here as well. Okay, and now if we enable the particles collection, we can select the grass blade, add the ground material, duplicate this and maybe make it a little bit darker like that, and use the same for the leaf like that. Okay, so that's our little garden. Now we'll add some lighting, so let me disable particles again, select the collection, and now let's press Shift A and add sunlight. Let's drag it up and we'll enable scene lights and scene world. And now Alt period, switch to 3D cursor, RX 45 degrees and RZ 45 degrees. So we have light pointing in this direction. Now let's add some strength to that, so something like 4, and make it warmer like that. Okay, and let's add some area light, so they'll create some ambient lighting for us. Now I will rotate this minus 45 degrees and 45 on Z, so we are facing from behind. And let's make this really strong orange color, and let's add something like 500 or even 1000 watts to that. And I think some orange color would be nice for the background here, something like this. So it's a little summer theme here, and maybe we can add another tree here as well. And now I think we'll need to reduce the sunlight strength, because that was maybe too much. And now press Ctrl B to limit the view, and we'll switch to cycles, GPU, and I will enable viewport denoising, the new feature in 2.83. And let's preview this as rendered. So yeah, I think this looks okay. And now if you go to the color management, you can bring up the exposure a little bit and change the contrast. Okay, so I've played around with this a little bit more, and this is the finished scene. I've just modified the weight painting for the grass a little bit, added some more grass strands, modified the green colors on the ground and on the leaves here and on the grass particles, and basically just played around with the lighting some more. You can see there's really stronger orange light here, and then added some of that blue ambience to the world lighting, so it creates this nice effect. So if we preview the render, I think this looks really nice. So Yeah, this is the final scene, and this will be probably the final render. And I hope you enjoyed this. And again, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button and the bell button if you want to get notified when I release tutorials like this. And thank you all for watching, and have a wonderful day.